Welcome to CPG Vibes. No script, just chat. We talk all things food and beverage and so much more. Feel our vibe and search for CPG Vibes on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and make sure to give us a 5-star review. If you'd like to sponsor our show with your product or service or be a guest, email us at cpgvibes100@gmail.com. Now your hosts, me, Alex Baer with Genius Juice, and Wade Yenny. All right, welcome to episode 79 of CPG Vibes. We got some cool clothing going on here. I have my LA Country Club, which I'm not a member of because I cannot afford it, US Open branded pullover. Wade, for those that cannot see us, even though most of you can, the Daily Crunch hoodie, which looks awesome. I love it.
It's cozy. It's cozy. I like it a lot. And just, obviously, coincidentally, our sponsor today. So that's
coincidentally.
Yeah. Good timing, right?
Yeah, perfect. Impeccable timing. I must imagine, are you a little hot, like being inside, plus a shirt, plus a hoodie, plus the headphones?
Yes. It's funny because yesterday, I think it's been hot all week here. And for the last, just for weeks, and today or yesterday it barely got to 70. It was rainy, cold all day, and it's back in the 80s today. So I might take the hoodie off if it gets really hot, but I'm going to try and sweat it out for our Daily Crunch friends. So we'll see what happens.
Or when you take your hoodie off, just make sure the shirt doesn't go along with it, please.
Got it covered.
Yeah, we don't want to lose viewers here. So or maybe we might gain viewers. Who knows? So yeah, if you'd like to give us 5 stars, super easy. Go to Apple Podcast. We are at 110 since I last checked. Yep. So we're over the 100 mark. We're now the top 3 LinkedIn Live podcasts in the country. We're also the top 5 just podcasts for CPG, which is really, really cool. We seem to hit the charts in Canada, New Zealand, Chile, every place except the US, but we're coming for the US now. So we're getting there.
We're conquering the world first, and then
we're doing we're coming from all angles to get to the U.S. Right?
Exactly.
Pacific and Atlantic, just coming right in. Exactly. And like when you start a CPG brand, you start from New York and L.A. and just go and swallow the whole country.
Exactly.
If you'd like to be a sponsor on our show, cpgvibes100@gmail.com. We have some openings that are coming up in the next few weeks. We had some bookings, some openings. It's a great price of $350. You get in front of, this episode, like Laurel scored big on this one with Daily Crunch. There's going to be probably over 100 people on here with a big guest, right? So make sure to email us if you'd like to be a sponsor. We'll mention you beginning, middle, and end. And we'll also be munching on your product during the episode. I don't have my bag today, but usually we are doing that. So, and then if you'd like to be a guest, there's a 1-year wait. Not to be discouraging, but there's a 1-year wait. So, but again, if we really feel it's a great story and we want to bring you on, we'll move you up. And so we are known to do that. Wade, anything else to mention before bringing on?
No, I actually think that was a good segue into introducing our guest, because if you have a great story or, something like that, that's a good segue into who we're about to talk to, right?
Exactly. And I'm going to play actually one of my favorite instrumental tracks, which is by Madonna, which we're not allowed to say because we don't have the licensing rights to her music. But I'm going to put on this music here to bring on our guest. Let's see. There we go. I remember singing to this before. All right. So this is Miyoko Schinner. She is a vegan chef, entrepreneur, and done so much in the space of CPG. Miyoko, welcome to our show.
Well, hello, Alex and Wade. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome, Miyoko.
And I'm honored that I somehow bypassed that 1-year wait period.
We do make exceptions. Yeah, and in this case, we definitely made an exception. So, where do you live?
I live in beautiful Nicasio, California. So I'm out near Point Reyes Station, sort of NorCal, Marin County, out in the boondocks.
Love it up there. Yeah, my sister's in the Sunset District in San Francisco near Golden Gate Park. It's just such a beautiful area. So you're across the bridge on the other side.
Across the bridge and really in the country. I'm in the Redwoods and the Golden Hills and It's just beautiful here, surrounded by equestrian centers, ranches, all of that.
Beautiful.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, there's no script, just chat on this show. As you can tell, there was very little preparation on our side, more than just having a few minutes before and talking with you about the episode. But we're going to really put it in your hands where you'd like to start this. We can talk about how you became a vegan. We can talk about your entrepreneurial journey. We can talk about what you're doing now. We're going to literally just hand the show over to you.
Oh my God, it's a monologue.
No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure.
Whatever. I'll sort of just kind of do a real quick snapshot of the trajectory of my life, or actually just talk about how we end up where we are in wherever we happen to be at that moment. And, how most of us don't really plot out our lives. Sometimes when we're in our 20s, we think, oh, I want my life to follow this trajectory. And sometimes it goes that way, but very rarely does it. But you don't see all the dots as you go through life, and you do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You don't see how all those dots connect to get you to where you are. And you think you're all building towards, you're building this momentum to land you at a spot when you're in, I don't know, somewhere past 50 years old. I'm going to be 66 next month, where you can now retire into the sunset and just, I don't golf, but just whatever, hang out for the rest of your life. And then there's a curved ball that's thrown, and your life doesn't stop. All of a sudden, you have to find a new route. You have to invent something new. You have to find a new path to continue in life. And you realize you can't slow down. So I guess that's in a snapshot. That has sort of been my journey from the time I became vegetarian when I was 12 years old to going vegan in my 20s, and all of the businesses that I've started. I've never been an employee of any company. I will say that to start with. I was a translator for a laser laboratory in Japan for a short time as an employee, but otherwise, I've always only been self-employed from my early 20s. With one business that failed after another, to having a little success, to not having success, and all of these points on this trajectory that really didn't seem to make sense. And it started to make sense at some point in my life. And I am just exiting a year of my life that I would describe as a major year of transition, where a year of, once again, having to find myself at a point where I have to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life again. And that journey sometimes just never stops. And it can be very exciting that we find ourselves with these challenges and dilemmas, because it means that we have to rethink everything again, and it helps us to grow.
That's amazing, and so inspirational and relatable to so many of us. I think I can't say that I've not worked for a company, because obviously I am, and I currently do. But when in my early 20s, when I was doing a little research for this episode, and I saw your background in restaurants. I actually started in the restaurant business, had my own restaurant for a little while. Didn't work out so well, mentioned failures and kind of dusting yourself off and keep moving. It's how I got into the grocery business, right? A failed restaurant career led me to where I'm at today. A couple curves in the road on the way, but so much of what you just said is so relatable. And I think, it's a lesson for a lot of our audiences, founders, emerging brands. And, at times that business, as you well know, is so tough. And it's easy to get knocked down, but the secret is getting back up and not letting one setback or failure dictate the rest of your journey. Right? It's amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there was a time, in CPG, if you think back 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people could start a small business, grow organically, take their time, and in some ways, it was easier to succeed then, because you didn't have to make huge strides every single year. You could just grow enough to make a living, and then grow a little bit more the next year. And today it's such a different scenario. If you want to succeed, you have to scale, and you have to scale fast, which means you need to take in money, and it's kind of like do or die. And so there's going to be fewer winners and more losers. And it's that rapid growth. How do you get on store shelves as fast as possible, expand as fast as possible? I think we're kind of at an unprecedented period in the way we produce, market, and distribute foods today. Throughout history, we haven't done this before.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because I talk with a lot of, founders, as you do, Miyoko, and how the struggle is really real. And we've talked about that a lot on our show. Just in the last year, there was a bull run, right, in CPG. And now it's kind of the bear, not my last name, but the other bear run. And so it's getting a lot harder. And there's one brand that I spoke to. I remember before I got into the space, I bought her product. I can't say what it is. I'm not going to narrow it down, but a female entrepreneur has this bottled drink, and she did that for years, just staying in stores, staying in Whole Foods, taking it really slow. And I just loved her product. I thought it's still to this day, very unique and still on store shelves. But she reached out to me about 6 months ago, and she's like, this is so much harder because I just want to coast and enjoy my life and not be pressured by big distributors or big promotions or off-shelf promotions. I don't have any investors. Like, she didn't have any investors, but she still is pressured to keep the velocity up because all these other brands are doing all this stuff and they have all this money.
Yep.
So that's what I'm seeing, is these small brands are getting squeezed out, just doing what they've been doing for 15, 20 years.
Right. No, and it's really, really sad because that means that we're going to have less diversity in the future. I've talked to retailers who just said, yeah, we're going to reduce the number of offerings, and we're only going to pick the most innovative products. And if you don't keep it up, I mean, I've seen very traditional brands that have been on store shelves for years just get kicked off, and their set just gets smaller and smaller as more innovative brands come on, but then they don't stay on shelves very long either as newer brands come on. And it's sort of sad because it costs a lot more to start a business these days. And you put your heart and soul into it. And just like this woman entrepreneur you were talking about, I mean, you just can't coast. Like, when do you ever get to a point in CPG where you can, take a 3-week vacation and
right.
be on calls all day long?
Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty much impossible these days. I've taken 3-day vacations, but not 3-week vacations.
Yes.
So let's go into some of the the projects and some of your labors of love and things that you are doing now. There's Rancho Compassion, right?
Rancho Compasión.
Compasión.
Yeah, it's like
Tell us about
compassion
that.
with one S, and it's in Spanish. Rancho Compasión is actually a farmed animal sanctuary that I founded in 2015 on my property. I live on a 17-acre property in Nicasio, California. And a couple of goats showed up one day. Someone asked me to take in these stray goats, and I fell in love with them. And then someone said, "Oh, you have land. There are these 3 pigs that need rescuing," and animals started arriving. And so I finally decided to start a nonprofit. And so we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We have about 120 animals, cows, pigs, goats, sheep, basically animals that would otherwise be commodified, that were taken out of the food system and just get to live their lives and be cared for. Just this afternoon, because I live here and my house isn't fenced. A cow named Angel just came and visited my backyard, and she likes to push the cover off of my hot tub. And so when I saw the cover pushed off, I knew it was Angel. And there she was, just standing outside my bathroom door, wanting to be, wanting attention.
Like a pet.
Like a pet. She's like a pet. And so really the purpose of this is, if you think about what happened with dogs, like if we're old enough to remember the way humans treated dogs in America, let's say 50, 60 years ago, oftentimes people had dogs as guard dogs. Oftentimes they were chained up in the backyard. And today that would be considered maltreatment of dogs. if you were to chain your dog up in the backyard. That would be, and a neighbor would complain. Today, our dogs are family members. They sleep on our beds. And so human consciousness towards dogs has changed. We don't even realize that today, because today everyone thinks, oh, dogs and cats, they're family members. Well, we didn't think that way, if you're old enough, 50, 60 years ago. And so we have actually evolved, as our human consciousness has evolved. And my hope is that our human consciousness towards farm animals that we employ in food and other commodities can also evolve to a point where we also see them not as commodities, but as living creatures, sentient beings that want to live their lives, that sometimes actually want to have a relationship with you. And many of them actually do when you treat them well. I mean, a goat is literally a dog with horns. They'll go on a hike with you. They'll put their head in your lap. There's almost no difference between a goat and a dog. But just, and so the reason I have this sanctuary is so that people can come and connect with pigs and goats and cows and geese, not gooses. And begin to see them differently. This is a lot, obviously it's not going to happen with one visit, but I can't tell you how many people who consume animal products have come here and gone, oh my God, I had no idea how friendly pigs were, or I had no idea that I would fall in love with this goat. And that's really why I started the sanctuary, to not to rescue animals per se, because there are billions of animals. There's too many animals to save. So I can't save them all, but I can save enough animals that they can be ambassadors to help plead their case to humans. And so we do a lot of outreach programs, a lot of education, bring people here, have events, give tours, have parties, that sort of thing. And so anyway, so it's very close to my heart, and looks like some of your people have been to Rancho before.
Well, I was going to say we've got David Delcourt from Grown As Foods. He says he loves Rancho Compasión, if I said that correctly.
Yes, you did.
Let us know how we can support. So is there a way that the people that are listening, watching, or both can support the nonprofit?
Absolutely. You can always make a donation. Go visit ranchocompasion.org. We are a nonprofit, and we depend on your support to continue to provide the veterinary care, the feed, the staff. It takes a lot to take care of 120 animals. So, yeah,
it's a lot of feed. Yeah.
but it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel I've been saved by the animals. I didn't, because it gave me this understanding. I didn't know until then either how loving some of these animals can be. I have a goose that will, when he sees me, his name is Echo, he comes running out of the pond and jumps in my arms.
Wow.
So
amazing.
It's that kind of, I have, a sheep that busts into the house all the time. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of my clients, because I do consulting on the side as well, because it's just hard to make money in this business right now, so you got to do stuff on the side. They have a farm. It's called Painterland Sisters. They do the yogurt, and they have cows, and obviously it's not vegan. They use dairy for the cows, but they have an entire family farm that's been passed down to many generations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked some of the founders this: who's your spirit animal? Because you have animals surrounding you. And Haley, which is the younger sister of the two, it's Stephanie and Haley. So the younger sister, the duo, said, "Oh, my spirit animal is a pig." I'm like, interesting. Most people don't say pig. Why did you say pig? And she started going into all the ways that we underestimate pigs.
Yes.
Right? How smart they are, how perceptive they are, how careful they are. And actually they're clean. They're clean. You see them rolling around in the mud in cartoons, but they're very clean animals as well, contrary to popular belief. So I love that with your mission with Rancho Compasión, I'm going to say it again so I get it right this time.
Yes, you said it.
That you're really supporting the animals, and being a vegan for 7 years and a vegetarian for how many years now? 17 years. Yeah, that's near and dear to my heart as well. Like I get really emotional when I think about what happens in this country and worldwide with how animals are treated. So we need to, what you're doing is a big step in the right direction.
Well, thank you very much. I will add, pigs do roll in the mud, and that's because
They do.
they do, because they don't have sweat glands, and that's how they stay
Oh.
cool actually in the summer. But in the winter they never do that, and they never pee or poo. Where I mean, their houses, their stalls are pristine. You never have to clean them. So
Well, and that's Laura Orley, who's our sponsor today with Daily Crunch. She talks about the pigs are some of the smartest animals as well, and her personal journey herself. I think she mentioned one of her children switched to a vegetarian for a year now, and she herself just stopped eating red meat and is going more the reducitarian route per Brian Cateman. And
that's fantastic.
yeah, and she also talked about Painterland here, that they did a collaboration with Daily Crunch. So interesting, very interesting stuff.
Cool. And on the vegan side, also just some of the vegan cookbooks. I remember learning about you at Expo East in 2014. It was the first Expo East show. I remember going out there and I saw your banner on the wall. It was like,
probably some homemade thing, because I
no, I'm talking, it was like, I think produced by New Hope or whoever owned Expo East at that time. And it was awesome to see that. And then I'm like, oh, Miyoko. And then I found out about the product. So I really discovered your history and your past and what you're doing and what you did for 30 years and what you're still doing, which is really pursuing veganism. And that includes cookbooks, that includes recipes. And I think vegan food, won't blab too much, but it's come a long way from like even 17 years ago when I became a vegan, where things are delicious. You don't need meat, in my opinion, right? Everyone has their own opinion, right? And that's fine. I respect that. But there's so many vegan recipes where you can get the nutrition and it's delicious. And I'll add one more quick thing. I want to pepper it in just to get it in front of you. Have you ever been to Cafe Gratitude before?
Oh yeah, I mean there was one down the street from me at one point. Yeah. But
so it was in Harrison Street.
there was one actually in San Rafael at one time, which
Oh.
is not far from me in Marin County.
Got it. I really love their dishes and what they do with vegan food, and they make it delicious. Like they make it decadent, delicious, and they cross over a lot of people that are not vegan. So I want to ask two questions. I want to find out about your vegan cookbooks, including a new one that's coming out. And then what are ways to get people that eat meat to really cross over to veganism and discover it? Like in your opinion, what kind of gets people to come over to that side of the aisle?
Okay, well that's it. Let me just talk a little bit about my cookbooks first, and then I'll answer that very, very important question. So I've been writing cookbooks since 1990. That was when I published my first cookbook, small publisher called the Now and Zen Epicure. And then it was like the first sort of fine dining vegan cookbook ever published, possibly. I think there was one other came out around the same time. But, until then, vegan foods most of the cookbooks were sort of, let's just be honest, hippy dippy, crunchy granola, that sort of thing. And so really I had a recipe for like tofu bourguignon, and really trying to infuse it with some French and Italian colors. And that was the first cookbook, very different from today. And I've written several cookbooks since then. In 2012, I wrote a book called Artisan Vegan Cheese, which oftentimes people attribute that book as sort of having contributed to the explosion in vegan cheese, and little vegan cheese producers who started thinking about fermenting plant milks using that book. And then 2 years later, I started Miyoko's. So the book preceded that. The books that if you're going to buy one book of mine, I would recommend a book called The Homemade Vegan Pantry, which is really just the opposite of CPG. In other words, if you ever wanted to make all those things that you would normally buy in a package, and be able to do it very simply and economically, that's your book. So whether it's ketchup or vegan cheese or an alt meat or pancake mix, or your own bouillon mixture, there's a recipe in there, and made with whole food ingredients, very simple, very easy, and you can have a package-free house. I mean, obviously, you have to buy the ingredients themselves, but you'll be greatly reducing the amount of packaging. The book that I'm working on right now, I just got a book offer. Is I don't have a name for it, but it's going to be about the vegan creamery. So it will have everything having to do with plant milk. So making your own plant milks, butter, yogurt, ice cream, cheese, whatever you'd find the dairy case. We'll be exploring really whole foods, natural, healthy, artisanal methods of doing that. And my hope always has been to make things as open source as possible, give people the power to do it in your home. And it really does not diminish products, the sales of products. When I wrote the book, it was because I wanted people to make it at home, but everyone said, I really don't want to make it. I'd rather just buy it. So can you just make it for me and I'll buy it? And that was one of the reasons I started the company. So, I think it's wonderful to have recipes and to really understand how these things are made. Ultimately, people are still going to be busy and they're going to be at the store and they're going to say, I'm just going to buy the ketchup anyway. So it's not going to impact sales, but it really is good to know how to make these things.
Exactly. And I know we got the question on the docket, but the other thing I want to mention too, you must be a big fan of like vegan desserts, right? And I can see like, the cream cheese going into strawberry or chocolate, and that tastes like the vegan cream cheese and
Yes.
being excellent. I'm a huge fan of just like at birthday parties, I don't eat the cake that's there ever. Number one, I don't know what the hell is in it. Number two, it has 50 grams of sugar per slice. Number three, it has a ton of dairy, which will not be a fun car ride home. So vegan desserts are like an obsession of mine with like cacao. So what are some share with us like one recipe that you can think of for like vegan desserts? I know there's so many, but.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to be doing a dinner at a winery in Walla Walla, Washington in a couple of weeks. And I'm making a basil panna cotta for that. So, panna cotta is a very simple cooked cream recipe. You typically just cook cream with sugar and then add a little bit of gelatin to it. What I'm doing is I'm making a thick oat milk from scratch. It's actually an oat and cashew milk. And so when I heat it, the starch and the beta glucans in the oats and the cashews actually thicken it just sort of like cream. So I'm already adding consistency to that. And then I'm pureeing that obviously with basil because it's basil flavored, and sugar and a little bit of coconut milk to really give it that creamy consistency. So it's more or less a whole foods dessert, but it tastes very elegant. And then I'm going to top it with lots of fresh summer berries that are macerated in a little bit of sweetener. So that's a really simple dessert that you can make in about 10 minutes. And then you just have to let it chill in the refrigerator for a few hours. So it's so easy to substitute for the dairy or the eggs with vegan. It's vegan baking or cooking. Desserts I used to have a bakery. And in fact, I used to sell these big 9-inch whole cakes to Whole Foods all over the country. That was one of my first
No way.
businesses. Yeah.
Oh, wow. What year? What year was that?
So this was in the 1990s.
Okay.
So I don't remember exactly when, but I started, it's probably early 1990s. And the way it was first regional, and then I started shipping them because I started getting requests from stores across the country. But it was pretty funny because I used to deliver them in the back of my Volvo station wagon. That is what the CPG industry was like.
That's what it was like. Yeah.
You could bypass distributors. It was funny. So I baked at my house initially, and then I got a little sort of timeshare bakery where I baked the cakes. And then I baked, I think 3 or 4 days a week. And then on Friday, I would just make the circuit all around the Bay Area, dropping them off at different stores. So
Yeah, that's an awesome story.
yeah.
I'm sure John Mackey was in a Beetle right behind you or something at that time in Austin, Texas. So let's go back to the question also, and then I want to switch over to a different topic. And this is about just getting meat eaters to cross over to become vegans. Like, what are ways, if you were to talk to a meat eater that was eating meat their whole life, what would you tell them to say, hey, this is why the vegan diet is good. This is why you should try it or move over to it.
Well, I wouldn't do that because it doesn't work. People
Right.
don't make food choices intellectually based on logic. And that's why that just doesn't work. What I would do is invite them to dinner. And I would just serve them the most delicious food and plant the seeds. Now, I'll tell you a little story. About 2 weeks ago, I was asked by a local community women's organization, to do a cooking class. And so I did. I said, yeah, sure, I'm happy to do a cooking class. And about 20 women came. They were not vegan. There was actually one sort of vegetarian person, but otherwise they were not vegan. And as we cooked together for about 3 hours and laughed and talked, and I held it outdoors. We have a beautiful vineyard, so I held it out there under an arbor covered with vines and, served them wine and just created this whole experience. People had so much fun. One of the dishes didn't turn out because they were doing things and something didn't go right, but it didn't matter. They were just like, oh my God, not only is the food incredible and we've learned so much and I can't wait to make this for my friends and family, but I met new people and I made friends and we have a sense of community. And I really believe that's the most effective way. Now, did they all go home saying they're going to be vegan? No, but they have a different idea about veganism now than they may have had before.
Right.
And they're going to go home and share it with everybody. Now, the reason I know that was a positive experience was that later on, they got back to me and asked me to hold the holiday party at my house. And I said, I would love to do that, but it's a potluck. And so everything has to be vegan because I don't allow animal products here. And they said, we'll get back to you. And then they called me back and said, we're going to tell everyone has to be vegan. We can't wait to try making a vegan recipe. And if you'll share some recipes ahead of time. So somehow creating a moment where you bring people together that is positive and engaging and fun can nurture excitement and inspiration in people and get them interested in exploring something further. People want to belong. People want to be part of a community, and you have to create those experiences. Eating is a lifestyle. Eating is about community. And so you can't just say, well, you shouldn't be eating meat because of the environmental impact or the harm to animals. That just does not work. People
Right.
don't want to be guilt tripped.
Yep.
But, what people want is to have a reason that speaks to their heart and soul. Not their minds, it's their heart and their stomachs as to why they should eat a certain way. And so my interest, if just to mention, I don't have it fully formulated, but going into the future, what is my next role? I am going to be, I'm working on something, not very formed yet, but it will be some sort of lifestyle brand that will involve community, because what I want is to create these opportunities for people to explore something in a setting that's positive and beautiful.
Love that. And it's cool that I met Ryan Black, I believe is his name, the founder of Sambazon.
Yeah, I know Ryan. Yeah.
And have you been to his office or checked out their
No,
headquarters before?
No, I haven't. It's supposed to be pretty cool. He had an event last year that I didn't go to. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and the reason I bring him up, it really reminds me like what you're looking at for your next project, which is based on lifestyle and community, where he wants to do more events, bringing together different brands at different venues, which are upcycling, better for the environment, all these different things. And so so with him, he is wanting to have a vision of having more acai bowls events, like not just acai in its own form, because acai on its own isn't that tasty in my opinion. It's very bland, but having the honey, the bowls, the coconut shreds, the honey, the
Mhm.
whatever's on there. And so he's really last time I spoke to him in person, he said, I would like to go in that direction. So I would like to reset the room really quickly here. I'm going to only do it once because we have limited time, but this is episode 79 with Miyoko Schinner. She's vegan chef, author, entrepreneur, so much more, has an animal sanctuary called Rancho Compasión. And if you have any questions for her, there is a comment box, as you've noticed, and you can make statements and we'll shout them out and we'll click on it like we're doing here with Annie Wu, Sweet Duets. But if you also have questions for Miyoko, now's your time to ask her, right? So make sure to do that. So wait, it looks like you're...
I was going to say, I've got something. I've got a question.
Yep.
So I kind of want to spin a little bit towards the CPG side. And, you know, obviously it goes without saying you're a, you know, I can use so many different words to describe your journey in the CPG space, you know, being a pioneer, being a legend, you know, all the above, right? But talk a little bit about, you know, you really truly were ahead of the curve when you talk about the category that you were in with plant-based cheese. And, you know, when you entered that category, there was little to anything even available. So I want to talk a little bit, you know, you've given some background as to what inspired you, but talk a little bit, again, with our audience being a lot of emerging brands and founders, about some of the bumps in the road you ran along in the way. I can imagine between being in a category that didn't exist, refrigerated product, so on and so forth. There have to be a lot of things that you dealt with, and you know, a female founder. You know, there has to be so many different things that you had to overcome to make your business successful. Talk a little bit about that journey.
Sure. Let me talk a little bit about what was successful first and then what wasn't successful. So at the time that I started the company in 2014, there were a couple of products in the marketplace. Daya and Follow Your Heart both had slices and shreds. And in other words, sort of the processed vegan cheeses that I think speak to a certain audience, certain sector of the American public. I wasn't sure if that was the right sector that we should be targeting. And, you know, it's sort of, I often talk about the Tesla model. It wasn't, what piqued America's interest in electric cars was the fact that there was now a sexy electric car, and it was expensive, but it didn't matter because it was sexy, because it was supposedly green. You know, people bought it. People in a certain, what you call the early adopters. And I felt like that was the market that needed to be tapped. And I didn't think that the early adopters were going to be buying slices and shreds. Now, I have recipes for cheeses like that in Artisan Vegan Cheese that I had written before. I could have produced them. But I really felt what needed to be done was to sort of wow those early adopters with really high-end products. And a lot, you know, it's a Tiffany model. You start with the best product first, and then you trickle it down to things that are more accessible to the average people. So price, you know, people always say price point, price point. I don't know that price point is always that important when you're trying to create a new category and you're trying to get the a category that could grow. It can't be that esoteric of a category, but if you're trying to create a new category that actually has real potential, sometimes the best approach is to make the best quality product possible and not worry about the price tag, because the people that want it are going to pay for it.
Yep.
And then it was preaching to the choir. I was heavily marketing to vegans that had been clamoring for good quality cheese. And I didn't care that it was a limited audience, because I knew they were going to be, you know, my trumpeteers going out there and blasting it to everybody. So I feel like that was what went right in the beginning. And that's why the brand took off like this. It was like a hockey. It just blew up almost immediately. And the biggest obstacle, the area that I failed, was that I didn't predict how fast it would grow initially in the first year or two. And I had basically, I had operational inefficiencies, operational challenges, because the type of fermentation we were doing with plant milks, you couldn't do it with traditional dairy equipment. and you couldn't do it at a facility, a co-packer that, like, let's say makes, um, you know, slices and shreds, because they're not fermented. So we were doing something nobody else had ever done before. And so it was figuring out, how do you scale this? What's the right equipment? And because of that, I started very small batches. So it was a step up from homemade, in a small facility, and we outgrew it within a year and a half. And we basically didn't grow for the last year because we had maxed out. So there was no growth our third year, because we were making as much as we could, until I raised more money and was able to build a facility, figure out what sort of equipment to get. And we even had hiccups there. It didn't, when we put in this line, it didn't work at first. All of the cheeses, it broke. The consistency came out like not like cheese. The cheese didn't set up, it didn't coagulate. And then we had to rethink that. So I would say the operational challenges were the biggest in the very early days. We had our fill rates went down to something like 12% in December of 2020.
Wow.
It was 17.
Did the retailers keep you in because of that fill rate?
Our fill rates were so low, they were about to kick us off shelf. But our demand was so high. And so we had weekly calls with retailers and distributors. We had to manage that process really well. We cut a bunch of products and just decided to focus on 3 products. And then we lost shelf space for the others, because we had to focus on the ones that we could make the most volume initially, so that we could have get to a better fill rate. And then, so we lost the shelf life for some of these other products that were more complicated. And then we had to fight to get that shelf space back, if that makes sense. Some of it, which we won back, and some of it, which we didn't. So the operational issues, I think, were definitely the biggest challenges for the first, several years.
Yeah.
Trying to make a novel product in a brand new category. It was not the demand that was the issue. It was trying to figure out, how do I do this at scale?
Yeah, I've seen this, and Wade knows I'm going to bring up Coconut Cult as one of those examples where, but same thing in your case, right? Where you were doing something that has not been done before. And I remember, again, I don't like to badmouth other brands, but just say it as it is. I remember at the Green Festival in LA, right? We were there. This was 2014. Daya was next to us. A lot of people love the brand. They buy it. I just, at the time I was a vegan, now a vegetarian. I just didn't think it was clean. Like, it just didn't have the clean ingredients in there, had a lot of fillers. I didn't feel good when I ate it. Again, a lot of people that are less sensitive, maybe they feel fine. I'm very sensitive, my stomach's sensitive, all that. So I feel everything I eat right away. And so that's where Miyoko's came in, where I'm like, wow, like I turned it around. I'm like, it's just this ingredient, this, and everything's clean. There's like 6 ingredients, 7 ingredients, the cream cheese, super simple. And that's what got me. And you're exactly right. I didn't give a shit what the price was. Like, I could have paid $7.99 for it, $8.99, $9.99, because I'm like, I can't find this anywhere else. But then, like you said, there's the other side where when you do something so daring and different and unique in that space, which was at the time very small, you have those production issues. But I think it's just common when you do something different, you release it, it gets really popular, you can't fill demand, then you got to like catch up to it, and then you're like behind the 8 ball for a year. So it seems like you went through that. And then when did you come out of that? Like, what year did you finally catch up and then scale effectively without any interruptions?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's it happened over time. Gradually we got better and better and better. And I can't speak much about recently, obviously, but it took a year or two to sort of to find our footing and increase efficiency. Eventually we got there.
Yeah.
And that ceased to be a problem.
Exactly. Looks like there's a question from Annie Wu. You mentioned that she's with Sweet Duets. You mentioned that people will pay for what they want. How are you able to differentiate, stand on next to your less expensive competition? You kind of answered part of that. this is an increasing concern of many of us who are smaller.
Yeah, no, and I totally understand, Annie, where you're coming from. And a lot of it has to do with our modern supermarket, the way distribution and food sales are, the infrastructure is set up today. That, we unfortunately don't have equitable solutions for smaller producers. As Alex was talking about, there's huge pressure to scale. If you can't scale, you're going to lose that shelf space. This is less so. I was on another podcast earlier talking to someone in Europe, and it's less so in Europe. I mean, there are so many more regional producers that you just scale to a certain point where you can make a living, and you're only distributing locally, and you're only going to find those products locally. But which is sort of exciting, which means that every place you go to, you've got these proud producers that are like, we make the best, whatever pasta, or we're so proud of our company, whatever. And it's kind of exciting that you can find different products in different regions. And you don't have to be everywhere all at once, everything everywhere all at once. You can just be who you are in your area, and you can make a living. I like to say these days, we need to create an economy where everybody can make a living. We don't have to make a killing. Today, it's like everybody wants to make a killing. And if you don't do that really, really fast, then you're not going to attract investors. And that presents challenges, not just to small producers in the CPG arena, but to farmers as well, who are providing the ingredients for the small producers.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think that's a lot. Alex and I talked a lot on the show about, growing your brand and your business regionally, locally, and really taking care, doing the demos, doing the sampling, promotions, and just really making those connections and building that community locally.
Yes.
Before, and I always use the hashtag crawl, walk, run, with that mythology being, you have to own your backyard before you can even think about scaling. And I think so much of what you just talked about is just kind of aligns with that mindset. And I think, using your experience from what you said before, you grew so fast, you weren't ready for it. And, in hindsight, start small, get big eventually. Right. I mean, that's kind of the way I think, the way things need to happen. So.
Well, crawl, walk, run is a motto that I've heard many, many times. But I don't know how applicable it is today with the demands that come from the venture capital world. And oftentimes you don't have a chance to crawl. Right. It's run immediately. And so, we have a different paradigm for CPG today than we did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even 20 years ago. And I don't know how sustainable this is and for how long. And I don't know the overall impact it's going to have on diversity of products, as well as equity for people, for more producers.
Exactly. And one thing, not to totally toot my own horn, but the crowdfunding piece and perspective, which has become so much more popular now.
I love that.
And I consult on it, is like, we raised 1.6 million at Genius Juice. We have not raised any VC money. We've definitely pitched in the past. Don't get me wrong, because that's the model. But it's a cool thing where you can go on this website. It's not easy, right? It takes a lot of work, a lot of phone calls, a lot of texting, email, community outreach, demos, giving people flyers to invest. But, with Genius Juice, we had over 2,000 people invest in our crowdfunding round, over $1 million. And now those are investors, right? They're investors that become customers. Is that going to get us to be national in every single big chain? No, but it's going to give us the capital to produce the product, get it on the market, and dig really deep locally, which to me is like, I love that, just have to make a living, not a killing. And then you can also, crowdfunding has models now where you can raise and return the money to your investors at a profit, because you're operating locally and profitably, right? So it's a really cool model that's growing. And I don't think who knows, right? Could it kill the VC market? Who the hell knows 5-10 years from now? But it's definitely putting a new perspective on how companies are raising money now.
No, and I love it. I love it. I mean, just, 10 years ago, the SEC didn't allow that. You had to be a qualified investor. The fact that, there's WeFunder and several other platforms, Republic, I think it's fantastic. And I think, the next, whatever it is I do, it will be crowdfunded. Because I think that's really, you're giving, what was the word you used? Investimers or
Investimers.
yeah, customers. I love it. And that gives an opportunity for them also to participate in the journey that hopefully gives them a return.
Exactly. And they're cheering you on
Yes.
because, it's not like they put in $1 million, one person. Each person put in 500 to 1,000. So they're not going to be calling you every week. How are we doing? How's the profit? How's your growth? Are you in Kroger yet? All that stuff. They're more patient and understanding. So, yeah.
Right.
We're short on time. We have 5 minutes left. I want to leave time for 2 items. We have our stuff we love. So, Miyoko, we do this every week with our guests where we just talk. We put on some really cheesy stock music and we talk about a brand that's in our pantry or in our fridge right now that we absolutely love. And I'll quickly, and this is not a pantry for me because you can't drink this, but big fan of Dr. Bronner's. So I use their lavender sanitizer. I have this in all of my cars, every room of the house. So that's my stuff we love. Wade?
Well, I'll let Miyoko go first because I'm going to segue into
the sponsor.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Miyoko,
Yep.
go ahead. And
Well, this is a small producer. It's a woman-owned company, and it's a granola that I like to have with my yogurt. It's called Nana Joe's, and so I have some of her granola around most of the time.
Okay, I know Wade is looking it up right now.
I'm familiar with the brand. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the brand.
They're local in like San Francisco area, Bay Area. By the way, I got to say this, I'm random like this. My favorite golf course in the country is in San Francisco, and it's the TPC Harding right near Lake Merced. It's the best golf course. So beautiful up there. I just wanted to drop that in since you're from that area. So.
Okay. Where are you anyway? I don't even.
I'm in Redondo Beach.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, so I go up there to visit my sister. She's 2 miles from Lake Merced, and I'm bringing my clubs every time. So, all right. So Wade, it is on you.
All right. So, I'm going to plug and Daily Crunch, who is our sponsor today. And I'm not just doing that because they're a sponsor. I think if I'm not mistaken, Alex, help me out. I probably had them as the stuff I love more than once on the show.
Many times.
Yeah, I was going to say more than once, and there's a reason for that. It's really just fantastic product. And if you're new to the show, or if you're not familiar, we're going to come up here in the next segment with a question about something we talked about during the show, and you're going to potentially be able to win a 6-pack of Daily Crunch's latest flavor, which is dill pickle. So it's kind of a big deal. Get it? But it's their latest flavor, very delicious. It's so popular, in fact, that you have to wait a little bit to get it because they're sold out and they're rapidly making more. But if you're not familiar, Daily Crunch is a woman-owned sprouted nut company that has 7 amazing flavors. Dill pickle is the latest. They're keto, vegan, non-GMO, and they're made with all clean ingredients. After trying the crunch of these almonds, you won't be able to go back to regular almonds. And this is something, I don't know that we've done this before, so this is really super cool. You can, anybody listening or watching, whatever you want to say, you can enjoy 25% off all Daily Crunch sprouted almonds with the code GENIUS, that's all caps, GENIUS 25. So use that code on the Daily Crunch website, which I have there in the chat, Genius 25. They also, we'd like to encourage you to sign up for their newsletter so that you're the first to know when they're back in stock with that wildly popular new flavor dill pickle. And you can keep up to date with all their seasonal flavors and innovation that they come up with if you sign up for the newsletter. So Daily Crunch, great product. DailyCrunchSnacks.com is the website, and use that code Genius25.
Yep. I wonder where that name came from. And as far as our permanent sponsor, real quick, because we want to stay on time here, is V Driven. That's V as in velocity driven. Luke.Abbott, ABBOTT at VDriven.com. They do it all. I mean, they do master sales where they have relationships with buyers. I think the big thing, Miyoko, on this is they do trade spend deduction management and fighting deductions.
Oh, that is so key.
So key.
That is so absolutely key.
Yeah, I've clawed back, I think, almost $40,000 in 1 year alone from all that. So yeah. Anyway, so that's what they do. They do soup to nuts. They do accounting for you. They do it all. Anything. If you're a CPG brand, that's anywhere from making 50,000 in revenue to 20 million or 30, even above that. They can help you. They have all the infrastructure. And Luke Abbott is an operator that had a distribution company, Monterey Provisions, and then sold it. So he's been in the industry for a long, long time. Not too long. I don't want to date him too
Wow.
much.
I mean, that's great because if you're small, you just can't afford to do it in-house sometimes. So
Exactly. And their accounting alone is under 1,000 a month to do your accounting, right?
that's
Day to
amazing.
day.
That's
So,
amazing.
yep. So I doubt they're making a lot of money, but they just want to help the small guy. Okay. So we're going to have the Daily Crunch as one of our prizes. There's going to be a second prize, which is the Genius shots. We're doing nootropic functional shots that are coming out next week. Our production, literally both are drinking at the same time. It's funny. Our production is on Sunday of this weekend for a brand new product line from Genius Juice, which is a nootropic wellness shot, functional mushrooms, kind of a mud water in a bottle. And I'm going to give away a free case of that right off the line. I'm going to go straight to FedEx and ship it out. So there'll be a second winner here. So first winner, I guess, Wade, should we do? They can pick what they want.
Well,
or what do you think?
What I think. I think we double this up and say, because they have to wait for the dill pickle, maybe you could send the shot now while they're waiting for the dill pickle. What do you think?
I like that. It'll keep them focused.
And it'll make us only have to ask one question, and we won't have to watch through the zillion answers that are going to come in, right?
Cool.
So you can enjoy your shots while you're waiting for your dill pickle Daily Crunch sprouted almonds.
Okay, so Miyoko, usually we have the guest ask a question, something that you mentioned during the episode, a fact, a name, a location, a cow's name, a sheep's name, an ostrich's name, anything that you want to ask as a trivia question for someone to answer, and then they'll win the prize. It should be a little bit difficult, not easy to answer.
I mentioned the name of a goose that loves to jump in my arms. What is his name?
That's the question I was hoping you would ask.
There you go. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, there's a little bit of a delay, but I'm sure there'll be some answers coming in.
Let me give you a little story, a little hint. If you're from SoCal, he was Paul. Yes, Paul. Somebody got it, and several people got it. Let me just tell the story really quickly. He and two other geese were found running around Sunset Boulevard in LA near Echo Park.
Really?
Yes. And he was rescued. They were rescued.
Okay.
Someone abandoned them, I guess, near Echo Park, and they found themselves living in an alley outside of a Chinese restaurant and running around Sunset Boulevard. My daughter was driving there at the time in a traffic jam, and she actually rescued them. And anyway, they went to a waterfowl rescue first, but they didn't have room, so they ended up coming to Rancho Compasión. And he's such an amazing goose. I can't stop talking about him. I love it.
I love the name too. I was thinking Echo because when he,
no, it was Echo Park. Yeah,
Echo Park. Yeah. It's right around the corner from here. Yeah, cool. And that's the first time that traffic worked out to our advantage, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So couple things to mention if you want to support Rancho Compasión, the 501c3 nonprofit that Miyoko Schinner has. Make sure to Google it. You can go and you can actually contribute. There's also a new vegan cookbook coming out, which is called the Vegan Creamery.
Well, I don't have the name for it.
TBD. It's TBD.
TBD. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And cool. All right. Anything else you'd like to point our viewers to any other projects?
Yeah, just check out, I just want to remind you, check out my scrappy little YouTube show called The Vegan Good Life with Miyoko, which I started about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be checking that out for sure. So,
there's the link right there.
Boom, boom. Wade is just so fast on that.
You are, I can't, yeah. I can't keep up with you.
Definitely.
And once again, make sure that you go to dailycrunchsnacks.com, use code Genius25 and get those sprouted almonds. I mean, the crunch is real. It's unique, very unique,
And the
fantastic
dill,
stuff.
that sounds delicious.
It is. And the Nashville, I'm partial to the Nashville hot, but the
Me
dill
too.
pickle are awesome too. So, hey,
Yep.
you could probably mix them together because in Nashville they do the sandwiches with pickles there too. So both of them are delicious. So
Yeah, the Nashville hot was the first one I had when I met you in Carlsbad. He gave me a bag of it, and I was hooked ever since then. So cool. All right. Well, if you'd like to be, again, a sponsor, cpgvibes100@gmail.com. Make sure to reach out to us. And then we're having another episode. We're still going. We're still here. So the next episode is going to be Friday, 2:30 p.m., 5:30 Eastern time. And we are going to have
Mr. Hank Watt.
Mr. Hank Watt, who is commenting through this episode. And he said, "I love you, Miyoko." So that was very sweet of him.
Thank you.
So, Miyoko, thank you so much for being on episode 79, for sharing your story. And it's hard to put in words, but you're truly inspiring. So thank you for taking the time to be on CPG Vibes.
Thank you. It was fun.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. It was great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.